Om Namo Narayana. 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 I bow to the infinite. I bow to him in his specific manifestations, including your own. Because everything is a part of him. But the problem with human consciousness is that it is so locked in the thought of self, the little self, the ego. We need to overcome that thought that we are separate from each other, for one thing. But you see, that infinite has taken on the germ of individuality in every human being. How many lives we live, and each one we go through similar experiences as other people, but we always go through them in our particular way. We tend to think, therefore, that we think competitively. People do. That I'm better than this. You'll find that people who smoke will say, well, at least I don't drink. And people who drink will say, well, yeah, I drink, but at least I don't smoke. And they'll always find ways of justifying themselves and putting themselves above other people. And it's very difficult in this world where self is your reality. It's what you have to start with. And yet it isn't your reality, because it's not what you end with. In the end, you discover that you are all selves. In the end, you discover that you are the infinite. But it takes a long time to reach that point. And it's a very great help to understand, in the meantime, that every other state of consciousness is really only a delusion. It's only a dream. We need to go beyond the self-preoccupation and thinking that we have to protect this self, and yet the worst of it is that somehow we do have to. God has created such a complex picture. The important thing to understand that whereas humility is the most important virtue in a sense, it is not a hangdog sense of self-defeat. It's not a hangdog sense of inferiority. Humility means simply to forget yourself. You can be just as egotistical, thinking I'm no good, as you can thinking I'm great. Both are an excessive consciousness of self as an individual apart from all other individuals. There was an interesting question that was put to my guru by a man named Clifford, who was himself very egotistical, actually, and he was always trying to express how clever he was at this or at this. It's just human nature. There's no point in criticizing something that's practically given to you on a platter, hard to avoid. But Master's answer to his question here, and the need for the question, was also quite easy to understand. But the Master's answer to it was beautiful. Sir, Clifford asked, how can one become more humble? Humility, the Master replied, comes from seeing God, not yourself, as the doer. When you see him acting through you, how can you be proud of anything you do? I could sit here all day singing my own praises. It would mean nothing to me. I would know that I was giving praises only to God. Humility lies in the heart. It is not a put-up job. You must feel that everything you do is accomplished by him alone, through you. An interesting memory of my experience with the Master was that I never saw in his eyes even a flicker of egoic self-awareness. The self of which he was unceasingly aware was the divine within him, selfhood expanded to infinity. A comment we heard frequently from him acquires special meaning from the foregoing observation. I killed Yogananda long ago, he said. No one dwells in this temple now but God. Humility, it's a very important point that he made also when he said, humility is not a put-up job. It's not a matter of saying I'm no good, you're everything, always giving the credit to other people, but it's a false thing usually. It's a put-up job. The important thing, first of all, and it's a very important thing to keep in mind, nothing that we can do is really important anyway. You could be a world conqueror, it wouldn't be important. You could be the greatest writer, it would not be important. You could be a great composer, it would not be important. All the things that man can do, that man himself looks up to and think, oh, isn't that wonderful that he did? If only I could do that. It's just ego. Nothing that we do really matters. Empires are built, empires dissolve. Great works of art come, and then who knows what those artists will be in their next life. Maybe having reached the pinnacle of success in one art, they will be engineers next time, or who knows? I can't imagine that anybody would want to just keep on doing the same thing. Somebody said to me he was sort of into learning how to be Amar, to be deathless, to never die, to live forever. And he took his inspiration from Babaji, who is one of the Amar masters in the Himalayas in India. But he was saying that we can all learn to be this, and he was trying to urge me to take up this crusade and have him come and give a lecture there so he could explain to people. I said, listen, it would really be a great misfortune if nobody died. What if you had somebody like Michelangelo, who's already, now let us say, that he's 400 years old, and here you come as a little young artist of 20 years old trying to compete with him? Where would you get? You need to clear the decks. You need to get rid of all the old wood and be able to plant new trees. It's a good thing that there is death. It's a good thing that there is change. It's a good thing that new people come along and have an opportunity to do better. One time somebody had asked my guru to hold a baby, and he said later, I nearly dropped it, because I saw in that tiny little form there was the soul of a murderer. That is to say, that person in his last life had been a murderer, and he came into this life with those propensities. Well, you have so many things to overcome. We need death in order to give us a chance at least to, why, if that little child had grown up knowing that he had been a murderer, it would be much harder to overcome that memory. It would be much harder for him to tell himself that I am not a murderer, I will not be that way anymore. There would be that hypnosis hanging over his head. But you did it, you were wrong, you hurt other people, you're evil. You need incarnation, you need death, you need the chance to try again. You need the chance to learn your lessons by wiping the deck clean and then trying all over again. Well, humility is a very important part of that. If you think that it's important what you do, then you'll want to try to repeat it maybe until you get sick of it. Understand that, really speaking, God is the doer, and that anything that you do, there's a great deal. I had a struggle with this, I suppose everybody would, but I would always try to insist that God was the doer, but there was always this little thought in my mind, yeah, but I did something too. And that's a natural thought. It's the thought of the ego claiming its own. But you have to be severe with yourself. You have to say the ego cannot really do anything well. The extent to which it thinks it's doing it well, it won't do it well. The more that you can bring God in as the doer, the more God will be able to do it well through you. But the more you think you did it, the less you can do it well. I've seen this from my experience. I know what I'm talking about. I don't mean that you should passively say, well, God, you do it. You have to do your best. But you have to understand that that inspiration has to come from Him. Otherwise, it will be merely thought through. this is something, well, let me tell another story. It's from a book by A. Bell, My Talks with Great Composers. I think it's just without the my, Talks with Great Composers. He talked with people like Brahms and I believe, other famous composers back in the Western world. And they told him that those composers, they felt that they'd received their inspiration from above. Brahms made this comment that, I was trying to think of the name of Wagner. It wouldn't come to me, but he meant Wagner also and a number of other well-known figures. But he said those people who try to create just with the mind will never be able to create good music. I remember there was a woman who was, I used to call her my best critic, not musically, but she was very good at the lyrics, and she would sort of whip me into shape when I was willing to take a a shortcut on something. But she used to write music also, and I never told her, but it was really awful music. She was very good at her critical faculty, but she didn't have the inspiration because it was too much critical faculty. You'll find that people who are too good at criticizing, too good at picking out the faults of things, are not able to do things well. What she found was that she was, her words were too intellectual. Real inspiration does have to come from the heart, and I couldn't take literally everything she said. What I did was allow it to feed my inspiration, but I had to come up with the answers, because her answers are all just mind-born. That's not the way you can find, you can do things really well, no matter what you're trying to do. If you're trying to cook, you know, when my guru cooked even, he would put his mind here at the point between the eyebrows, and he would taste the food here at this point, and he would ask God to show him. I remember one time he came in blissfully to the to the room where we were all waiting. He brought us some things that he had just been cooking. He was a very good cook. But he was saying, I've tried for years to get just the right flavor, and then I prayed, and the answer was given to me. But you see, even cooking and little things, inspiration can be there always. Don't think that anything you do that it doesn't need inspiration, that it doesn't need guidance. The more you can talk to people with the feeling that you're not talking of your own likes and dislikes, but ask God to guide you, ask God to show you what He wants you to say, you'll be amazed at how much better everything you do becomes. You know, I've written a lot of music. I really didn't study. I played the piano for many years, and I studied singing, but composition I didn't study. I took 1 year and hardly ever went to class, flunked the course, because I hadn't done any assignments. But when the time came many years later where I felt inspired to, I found that, well, I couldn't do it. I didn't know the rules of right composition, but I asked the divine, and I could feel what was right. And again, I have seen in my life that if I don't try to do it myself, but let Him help me, it isn't that I give up and let Him do it entirely. It's that I have to cooperate with that. But humility means to understand really that you're not doing it yourself. When you give the credit to Him sincerely, and when you can say, well, God, inspire my thoughts, inspire my actions. I will reason, I will will, I will act, but guide Thou my reason, will, and activity to the right path in everything. I wrote a sonata many years ago. It's called The Divine Romance. And the first movement was not, it didn't have any voices to begin with. It was just hitting one note. And then around that note, I got all these chords that came just from asking God to guide me. Later, I put it to words. And the words are listening, whispering within your soul. God is there, always trying to whisper. I hope you like this song, because it's a very deeply meaningful one to me. It came from my soul to your soul. The Divine Romance, and God's call to the soul Forsake your delusions. Seek me. Joy to you.
Listen, listen, whispering within your soul, hints of laughter, hints of joy, sweet songs of sadness, of quenchless yearning for the light, for my love, your true home. Long your heart has played the dancer, long you've toyed with merest shadows of the treasures left behind you, deep in your soul. Long you've plumbed the dark for answers, long you've begged from beggars' empty hands, gifts of life they too were seeking, gifts none could share. Friend, how long will you wander? Friend, as long as you seek your home in a land where all are strangers, love locks her door. Leave to the weak his grave, and life to the coward leave his dreaming. Oh, my saint, wake up, reclaim the light, seek the truth behind all seeming. Leave to the weak his grave, and life to the coward leave his dreaming. Oh, my saint, wake up, reclaim the light, seek the truth behind all seeming. Turn, turn, turn within, in silence of soul, in cave of love, find my abode. Listen, listen, whispering within your soul, hints of laughter, hints of joy, sweet songs of sadness, of quenchless yearning.